up a lot of his, burn and aggro matchups. Then he has cards like Kitchen Finks and 3 copies of Siege Rhino in the main deck. That's a pretty heavy commitment to the card. Also has Tassiger and then the full play set of Lingering Souls on his side. Those are going to be the Abzan-specific cards.
For Jacob, you're not going to really find anything out of the ordinary here from him. It's Jund through and through. I guess the only real major surprise here are the 4 copies of Scavenging Ooze. Sometimes you see that card as a 2, maybe Max is a 3 of, but he has 4 copies here this particular weekend. So outside of that, I don't think you're going to see any real surprises, as he will start by sacrificing a Verdant Catacombs, search up a basic Swamp, and we are underway here in the Battle for Buys portion of Modern. An Inquisition of Kozilek is where Jacob will start. And he takes a look at Brad's hand, and given that Brad knows what he's playing against, it's no surprise to see him keep a hand with 2 copies of Lingering Souls.
2 discard spells, 2 Lingering Souls. I mean, this hand is very tough to disrupt. I mean, you look at this Inquisition of Kozilek from Jacob, and you could take half a Lingering Souls. He might just be better served taking one of Brad's discard spells and protecting his own threats. It's going to be difficult for Jacob.
Now, one thing to remember, too, and we've said this so many times throughout the turn, but it is worth repeating, is that players have access to each other's deck list.
Right.
So, once we get to a new stage of the tournament, the players will sit down, they'll exchange each other's deck lists, so Jacob will see, okay, Brad's on Abzan, and Brad will see, okay, you're on Jund, and that means it'll influence how they'll mulligan, how they'll sideboard, all that good stuff. So I think in a lot of matchups, Brad might look at this opening hand and go, ugh, no, let's send this back. Even though discard's very powerful, Lingering Souls, that's not going to get it done. But in this matchup, this is a snap keep.
Yeah, and the double discard on Brad's side is actually really potent here. So Jacob has a copy of Scavenging Ooze at the front of his hand. I mean, if you want to fight against Lingering Souls, it's a great option. If Brad had 1 discard spell, I think we'd see Jacob take the discard spell, play his Ooze, and let it be the trump. But with 2 discard spells, maybe you just have to go after Lingering Souls, and that's the move that Jacob makes.
Here's an Inquisition of Kozilek from Brad. So a Scavenging Ooze, an Abrupt Decay, a Thoughtseize, a Twilight Mire, and a Stomping Ground, the hand here for Jacob. So both players, as far as mana is concerned, not going to be an issue. They're just going to rip each other's hands apart to start things off. And as we've seen so many times in these matchups, it's just an attrition war. Though for Jacob, a huge top deck.
Huge top deck. As I was going to say before, if you look at the remains from the attrition war, Brad would be a pretty big favorite in that Jacob was going to be left with an Abrupt Decay and Brad with multiple Lingering Souls. Now, Dark Confidant is going to change that entirely here. Brad doesn't actually have the kill spell for it. And that, this card unanswered, that's what wins Jund mirrors.
A reveal of a Forest, and now a Thoughtseize the draw. And for those of you who have never really watched this kind of Black-Green Mirror before, it's not so much what Dark Confidant is drawing, it's more about just give me more cards, because players just tear each other's hands apart.
So many cards in this matchup just trade with each other. So the text boxes stop mattering as much, and really just the number of cards starts to be what the players will care about.
Here's a Thoughtseize, Brad with quite a few lands in hand. We know about the other discard spell and the Lingering Soul, so he hasn't drawn anything new. He did flashback Lingering Souls from the graveyard last turn. That's why he's got the 2 spirits on the battlefield. Jacob going to fall a little bit lower thanks to the Thoughtseize, and we'll see what he does want to select here.
See, he could take another half of a Lingering Souls. There was a discard spell. Now, there's not much in his hand worth protecting. That's why we see him go for Lingering Souls again. It seems like it's hard to take care of a card with flashback. And this kind of speaks to why Souls is so good in the matchup. You look at Jacob, Thought-Seizing a Lingering Souls and then Abrupt Decaying a Spirit token. That is a lot of value that Brad is going to get out of a 1 Lingering Souls.
These are the kind of exchanges that Brad wants to make. You're watching a player select a card that has flashback with a discard spell. That really just kind of sums it up. And now Nelson, look at the draw there of the Stirring Wildwood. It's just a land, but it's a creature land, which matters. Now here's Liliana. Liliana is fine in the situation, but not great because Jacob has to take 3. Doesn't do a great job of taking care of Lingering Souls. That's how Abzan gets an advantage in the matchup.
Well, the big draw was the draw that Brad had last turn, and that was a card Siege Rhino.
Yeah.
I know you think only for Standard is your first thought. And Jacob knows it. Look how many resources he's expending trying to get through these spirit tokens. He's slowly trying to work his way through Brad's resources.
He doesn't have a choice. He's just got to try to whittle away at these things and hope that Brad draws some lands or some irrelevant discard spells in the mid-game, stuff like that. So he's got to trade all of his resources to take care of these stupid spirits, which take a lot to get through. And now we're going to watch Brad come across here. Liliana's going to bite the dust. 1 damage will come through, and I think we're going to see a Siege Rhino here in just a moment.
Have to imagine. I mean, it's true even in Modern. Just when you have 4 mana and a Siege Rhino in your hand, it's probably the right play. And on Jacob's side, I think one of the reasons this is a tougher matchup for him is these value 4-drops like Siege Rhino. Sometimes you'll actually see Jund go toward them. You'll see a copy of something like Huntmaster of the Fells maybe in a Jund deck, or Olivia Voldarin. Jacob's creature base is 4/4/4, Dark Confidants, Scavenging Oozes, and Tarmogoyfs in the main, and that's it.
Yeah. As I said, his build is just a lot more streamlined than anything I've really ever seen. I mean, rarely do we see 4 copies of Scavenging Ooze in this deck, but again, it might be something where he's predicting a specific metagame, maybe expecting a little bit more burn than normal. It is a great card in the Black-Green Mirrors.
Yeah, Scavenging Ooze is great in the mirrors. His deck, it's consistent. There are a lot of matchups, especially when you're playing against linear decks. So if you're in a combo metagame, I really like Jacob's build in that. He's heavy on the discard. He has 7 main deck discard spells. He has none of the clunky 4-drops that combo decks can ignore. I think he would be good against unfair decks, but you know, Brad's is the opposite of that. Brad really wants to play fair Magic, and Jacob's at a disadvantage because of this.
Jacob with the Maelstrom Pulse, Scavenging Ooze in hand, a Thoughtseize as well, but you see the life total. He's already at 7. Rhino is very hard for his deck to beat unless he finds a Terminate. I suppose he does have Maelstrom Pulse. Not the most efficient way to get off the battlefield, but it is a way.
Yeah, I mean, if only he'd drawn the Maelstrom Pulse a couple turns ago, this would be a different game. Yeah. He could have gotten rid of the Spirit tokens. Liliana would take care of the Rhino. We'd be looking at something different. Now he has to decide if he wants to Maelstrom Pulse 2 tokens or just has to Pulse the Rhino because, as you mentioned, he is at 7.
Yeah, things are pretty hard here for Jacob because do I want to really cast the Thoughtseize? Not really. Don't know if I really want to check out to see what's going on in Brad's hand at the expense of 2 life. And also, we might see a situation here if you're Brad where you might change the way that you play and say, hey, just keep that Dark Confidant out there for me. Let that thing keep doing its thing.
Yeah, we played 4 turns of Magic, and it's been removal-based Magic. It's so hard to think that Jacob would already be at 7, but then you start to look at how things add up. It was Thoughtseize for 2, 5 damage off Dark Confidant flips, 3 damage off Spirit tokens, 3 damage off Siege Rhino, and you're like, wait, that's 13.
Jacob's got to take 2 from the Stomping Ground to be able to play the Scavenging Ooze, and now we're going to head back Nelson's way. He'll draw a card. I believe he picked up a copy of Abrupt Decay. If so, that's timely.
It's timely. So what Jacob was banking on here was that the Scavenging Ooze would undo the damage that has been done. Yes, he's paying a lot of life points to kill things. He'd be going to 3 on this attack from the Spirit tokens, but if the Ooze got to start eating creatures and went uncontested, he would gain life. He would be, actually his counter swings would be really sizable. Maybe he'd get it. If Brad is just at the ready with a removal spell for Scavenging Ooze, that is going to put a hamper in Jacob's strat.
Thoughtseize is going to select Thoughtseize, so now Wilson is empty-handed. But Brad's got so much life to work with that he's now falling down to 20 that he can afford to make a play like that where Jacob cannot.
Exactly. And you see here Jacob's one source of life gain, Scavenging Ooze, is about to get knocked off the table.
Nelson going to knock Wilson down to 3. The follow-up here is Abrupt Decay. Scavenging Ooze down past the turn back. Will it be Dark Confidant that does Wilson in? The answer is no. Raging Ravine is the reveal. Jacob will just play Raging Ravine.
Yeah, and he may not have any options other than activating his own Ravine. The danger being that Ravine plus Confidant, even if they swing... Well, I guess he can't do that. He'll just be dead to Stirring Wildwood. Yep. It's a tough spot.
Yeah, there's just not a lot he can do in this situation. I mean, the Dark Confidant reveals are going to have to be very favorable. The one thing we don't know right now is the card in Jacob's hand. That is a mystery. So what will Brad Nelson do this turn? Looks like he's going to start with the Spirit tokens. Terminate will take care of 1.
The trades that have been made for Lingering Souls this game, they both have been Thoughtseized. I think we've seen a Terminate, an Abrupt Decay, all sorts of things used on them.
Dark Confidant going to reveal a Dark Confidant. Wilson's at 2. 2 minus 2. I know you're a math guy.
I think, yeah, I believe. See, it would be your additive identity. So that means, there you go.
I don't know what that means. 0 was the answer I was looking for. Brad Nelson's going to win game number 1 here over Jacob Wilson. Abzan is up a game over Jun with your additive identities. We'll have to talk about that later. But for now, we will turn our attention to the sideboard here for both players. And as we do take a look at this, for Wilson, it's 4 Fulminator Mages, a Grim Lavamancer, 2 Kitchen Finks, 2 Obstinate Baloth, 2 Ancient Grudge, a Ghost Quarter, a Disfigure, Auxiliary Charm, and a Painful Truce. It's still a tough matchup, but there are some things to make it a little bit better.
So there's a couple ways he can approach it. He can go for more of a value plan. I think the Obstinate Baloths are pretty automatic here. They make cards like Liliana the Veil pretty difficult to play. Sometimes even one can get Thoughtseized. And just as a creature, it's pretty reasonable here. So he'll go for those. Painful Truth seems fine in the matchup. The interesting thing he can do here, and I've seen sometimes some players really swear by this in Jun Mirrors, and some players don't want anything to do with it, is the idea of boarding in Fulminator Mages and then looping them with cards like Kolaghan's Command. It is not entirely what the matchup is about, in that 2/2s for 3 are not very big. But at the same time, Fulminator Mage is just live over and over in the matchup, and if you get those 2-for-1s with Kolaghan's commands, you are creating value, even on the sense you're creating value on lands.
Well, the thing I'll say about that, it is a unique sideboarding strategy, but if Jacob feels the matchup is so bad for him, and we just saw game 1 where he's terminating Spirit Tokens and selecting Living Souls with Thoughtseize and Inquisition, which is the sign of a pretty poor matchup, if he thinks it's that bad, hey, that could be a game plan of maybe I'll draw 2 Fulminator Mages, kill 2 of his non-basic lands, and maybe mana screw him.
Right, which is why I think despite the fact that Brad has Fulminator Mages in his sideboard, they won't go anywhere near the matchup. Also, he can't buy them back with Kolaghan's commands, so they're even worse. But for Brad, I don't think he needs to, go for that, Hail Mary pass or something. I think he could just say, I'm going to play my game A, I'm going to board in Thragtusk, I'm going to get another Kitchen Finks, I'm going to get the Sorin, and maybe some Painful Truths, some more just more 2-for-1s, harder 2-for-1s. He'll go that direction. Celestial Purge, I think there's a lot of great cards here for Brad.
Yeah, Brad's options, you see the Engineered Explosives, the 3 Fulminator Mages, a Kitchen Finks, a Thragtusk, 2 Stony Silence, a Celestial Purge, a Slaughter Pact, a Sorin Solemn Visitor, a Damnation, 2 Painful Truths, and a Bitter Blossom. I do want to touch on the Bitter Blossom a little bit because it is something that can be killed by Abrupt Decay, but much like Lingering Souls, it is a real card advantage engine that's very difficult for Jacob to beat. Do you like bringing it in?
Well, the argument of dies to Abrupt Decay I don't think is that much of a concern. Jacob's Abrupt Decays are by and large going to find targets. In Brad's deck, unless he's going to go so far as starting to board out cards like Tarmogoyf, which I really just can't see him doing, I think it's okay to go with something like Bitter Blossom. My question would be, can we actually pay 4 life points for 4 1/1s over the course of a game? And I think the answer is yes. I would not be surprised to see Brad go for it.
Well, those are the options there for both players. They will shuffle up and get ready for game number 2, and Jacob Wilson will be on the play. But someone who is also off to a great start this weekend is Caleb Shearer. He was our Season 4 Invitational Champion. He is it 15-match win streak? 14?
14, but, I wouldn't be surprised to see it go even farther in the Modern pods today.
Now, of course, the Season 4 Invitational, he won last weekend to qualify for this tournament. He started that tournament 3-3, and he rallied off a whole bunch of wins to earn this Storm counter, as he is a big Storm fan, and actually went 3-0 with Storm in Legacy here to work his way into day number 2. A couple ways to go about getting this token. Of course, if you do play in an Open, you play in a Classic, or all orders from StarCityGames.com beginning January 29th at noon. That'll be the same weekend as our Columbus Open during Season 1 of the SCG Tour. You'll get a Caleb Shearer token, so do come by to those Opens, to those Classics, or place an order on StarCityGames.com beginning January 29th at noon East Coast time to get the Caleb Shearer Storm counter. And for Caleb, I'm sure we'll see him more this weekend because, well, he doesn't lose, so you have to feature him.
He's already locked into tomorrow.
Yeah. Now, what's going to be interesting for him is I think coming in, Legacy is something he felt very strongly about, very confident in, which makes his win last weekend in Vegas so much more impressive because it was Standard and Modern, not Legacy. But what I want to see now is when he's playing against some of the very best that we do see on the Open Series and the SCG Tour, how's he going to fare in Modern? With Affinity? How's he going to fare in Standard with his deck choice there? That's where things will get interesting.
Well, Affinity is a deck with so much finesse to it that, I think it's reasonable to play it at a veteran level. If you're just a veteran Magic player, you can pick it up and you can make it do things. But there's a difference between being just a veteran Magic player who's playing Affinity and being a veteran Affinity player. And this tournament is going to test just where Caleb is on that continuum right now.
Both players will take a look at the opening hand. And it looks like Jacob is going to keep. It appears Brad will do the same. And a Wooded Foothills is where Jacob will begin things. We'll head back Nelson's way. He'll play a Shambling Vent, the new creature land, and simply pass the turn back over to Wilson. It looks like Wilson will sacrifice the Wooded Foothills, likely going to search up a Ravnica duel here and just fall to 19.
One thing you notice about both players opening compared to last game is they've gotten away from some of their 1-mana discard spells. Last game it was discard flying back and forth until no one was left with anything, but now it's a gentleman's agreement of tap lands.
Yeah, the thing there is the discard spells are such a bad draw in turn 5, 6, 7. You saw the Thoughtseize at the end of the game game number 1.
Thoughtseize? Yeah.
Jacob couldn't cast his Thoughtseize because he was too low, and Brad said, well, I got this thing, so let's just make sure everything's fine over there. You're not really going to see so much of that anymore in the sideboarded games. Wilson's draw for the turn was a copy of Bloodstained Mire.
Yeah, instead we see grinding going on here. Multiple Tarmogoyfs, Kolaghan's Command. Those are going to be Jacob's weapons of choice.
And I'll be curious to see how players do search up lands a little bit here because they are decks that do have a lot of non-basics, so sometimes they can control what they search up and sometimes they can't. But is Jacob afraid of Fulminator Mage from Brad's side and vice versa? I suppose we'll find that out as this game does unfold.
Yeah, and even Fulminator Mage, it's not that you're so much land screwing your opponent. You're not trying to take them off all their mana. It's a value play, and at the same time, there's enough man lands on both sides, and they're relevant enough that you can play them just like your sideboarding in another kill spell, really.
Here comes Tarmogoyf for just one. See if Nelson has some way to get this off the battlefield. He does have a copy of Path Exile in hand, but I'm not sure he wants to pull the trigger on it just yet.
Pathing on turns 1 or 2 sometimes feels like a victory for the player whose creatures are getting pathed.
Well, there is the path. That will resolve. So a basic force is what Wilson will search up.
Now, the good news on Brad's side is that Jacob does not have any big sideboard haymakers that he's going to. Your real worry here would be that you were ramping Jacob into a Thrag Tusk by making this play. That'd be pretty bad. But Jacob actually in his sideboard doesn't have anything that big. The biggest thing he has is Obstinate Baloth.
And it's unclear if that even came in. There are times where you do want to board that in, so maybe get a little bit of one-upsmanship against the Liliana, and then other times where you're just, I'll just kind of leave it at home.
Yeah, you playing 4-drops that sometimes are smaller than your opponent's 2-drops is not always great. Tarmogoyf will outclass it at half the price.
There's a Fulminator Mage. And again, I know you felt that Jacob was going to bring his in. It was unclear if Brad will bring his in, but Jacob's first Fulminator Mage going to take care of a Shambling Vet, so that creature land does bite the dust.
Casts it straight to the graveyard. This is another punishing effect of Brad using Path to Exile. Is now Jacob's not just up 1 land. Now he's up 2 to 3. And you see Kolaghan's Command in his hand. We're talking about the ways that he can get this game. Kolaghan's Command discarding and buying back Fulminator Mage is not an unreasonable approach for Jacob.
Nelson going to play a basic Swamp. He'll sacrifice the Verdant Catacombs, fall down to at least 19, potentially less. And let's make it 3, as there's a Godless Shrine. Going to fall down to 17. And what's the play going to be here for Brad? He'll go with the Bitter Blossom. Had a feeling he was going to board it in, and now we'll see how effective this can be.
Yeah, it'll be pretty good here. Depends what kind of answers Jacob has.
Well, Maelstrom Pulse was the draw.
Well, now he has one. Excellent.
Well, it's curious, again, if he wants to cast this to kill Bitter Blossom right now, because we could see him, save that and say, I'll just kill a bunch of fairies, let you deal yourself some damage, or do I just want to kill your Bitter Blossom now?
Given the kind of preference that Jacob gave to killing Spirit tokens game 1, I mean, immediately Abrupt Decaying them, immediately terminating them, I can't imagine he lets this stay around. He clearly values that kind of creature really highly in the matchup.
A Swamp there for Wilson off the Verdant Catacombs. He falls down to 14.
Yeah, I believe he can do Tarmogoyf and Maelstrom Pulse, which now he gets Tribal Enchantment in the graveyard.
Heyo.
Those are 2 ones you don't normally get. Yeah, immediately reaches for the die for 6-7.
It's a big Tarmogoyf now. And Nelson, as you mentioned, is behind on mana. Jund, Abzan, those are decks that at times have difficulty playing multiple spells in one turn, as Nelson will draw a card.
Yeah, but one of the differences between the decks is where Jacob has Lightning Bolts, Brad has Path to Exiles. Yeah. So if we get into a straight trading game, Jacob's land advantage won't matter if his creatures don't compete.
There's Abrupt Decay. Down goes Tarmogoyf. And you're seeing Brad use Abrupt Decay there and maybe saving Path to Exile. 1, because it's a little bit more efficient that way. But 2, if a Raging Ravine shows up, Path to Exile clean answer that where Abrupt Decay is not.
Yeah, that's the big one, is its ability to answer man lands. For Raging Ravine in Jacob's list. No Treetop Village. Sometimes you'll see that as a creature land 5 or 6. Jacob's deck very stock. None of the sometimes spicy one-ofs you see show up.
Kolaghan's Command right now in Jacob's hand. Curious to see how he wants to go about using this card. Now, one of the downsides to Abrupt Decaying a Tarmogoyf and not pathing a Tarmogoyf is Jacob can say, Kolaghan's Command, get this back, and recast it. And Jacob going to sacrifice this Verdant Catacombs. And what's on the way now as he quickly searches up a Blood Crypt? You saw Brad discard Lingering Souls
right.
to that Kolaghan Command.
Just shows up. Even when Jacob's firing on all cylinders, getting things like Kolaghan's commands up, then Brad's discarding flashback spells.
Well, Jacob's on E. Grim Lavamancer, Tarmogoyf, pass the turn back. Not even a creature land among those lands, unfortunately for him.
That was exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking if Jacob had a Raging Ravine instead of a Stomping Ground, I think his position would be a lot more stable right now. As it is, if Brad Path to Exiles away the Tarmogoyf, which he does have, then Jacob's lands don't seem to matter as much right now.
Yep, Tarmogoyf down. Pathless search up. A forest there for Jacob, and it's Grim Lavamancer versus here for Wilson. We're heading back Nelson's way. He's stuck on lands. Doesn't have a ton of those to work with, but he's the one with the cards in hand.
Those are the last of Brad Nelson's basics, or rather Jacob Wilson's basics. So the Path to Exiles are just straight removal spells.
Painful Truths, aptly named. Nelson will take 3, but, get to draw 3 cards in this attrition matchup is pretty nice. And Brad's got some really nice cards to draw to as he'll sacrifice Marsh Flats. And some of the things that he can run into now, a card like Thragtusk. A big thing to undo the amount of damage he's taken this game as he searches up a basic swamp.
Yeah, he does have those big cards out of the sideboard that can just really help him trump the game. Remember, he has Tasigur, and I think we're going to see that right now.
Yep. The 4/5 for just a single black mana will come down. Nelson going to figure out what he wants to delve away. I imagine he'll leave Lingering Souls in the graveyard. But besides that...
I would... Well, I think he has to decide whether or not he wants future Tarmogoyfs to be big or small. And there's actually good reasons for both answers to that question.
Yeah, I suppose the Tarmogoyfs that Jacob could draw, he may want to lessen a little bit because Brad does have a pretty sizable advantage right now with the Tasker that's just come down. He has a copy of Thragtusk in hand, and I don't think he wants to work himself into Tarmogoyf wars.
Yeah, I mean, he does have his own Tarmogoyfs, but I think you're right. He's comfortable having the largest creature on the board as it is. Why mess up a good thing?
Terminate the top deck there for Wilson. Going to take care of Tasigur. Nelson will sacrifice a Marsh Flash yet again, and I think we might see...
Here's the Haymaker, yeah.
Former Standard Superstar.
Oh, man, that guy was a jerk.
Did you ever end up playing that? I think you just played Esper the whole time,
I just countered them. I mean, but Cavern of Souls was a card, so I did not always counter them. When I didn't counter them, then I didn't. That was bad.
Now, of course, Thragtusk is basically 100 cards in one, and when you're in an attrition mirror like this is a real issue. Now, you can't play a ton because it costs 5 mana, but when you can afford to play 1 and you actually draw to it and cast it, it's so hard for Jun to overcome this.
Yeah, I mean, it is a straight 3-for-1. 5 life is worth a card in this matchup. The 5/3 and then the 3/3 it leaves. The way to get through it from both decks is generally takes 3 cards.
Now, if there is a card that can become bigger than it, this is certainly one. There's a copy of Scavenging Ooze, so that can take away the Lingering Souls right away from Nelson's graveyard. It can also remove them other creatures, and now the Ooze can actually start to get to work a little bit here.
Yeah, we see Jacob immediately remove the Lingering Souls, but yeah, Fulminator Mage and a Tasigur in both graveyards, so Scavenging Ooze can get to 4/4. Now, the sweet spot would be 6/6. If he can get it there, then we're talking.
For Nelson, Thragtusk on the battlefield along with 5 lands. Only 1 green source of mana, but here comes the 5/3.
Jacob also has the option here to block with Grim Lavamancer and shoot the Thragtusk and attempt a 1-for-1 trade there. If it works out, the Scavenging Ooze could eat its way all the way to 6/6.
Yep. This is an attempt. Lavamancer's going to jump in front. There's a Lavamancer activation. Remove a couple of lands from the graveyard. And I don't want to say this is a Hail Mary here from Jacob, but I think it's pretty important for this exchange to work, and it appears that it will. So Thragtusk down, Beast Token on the way.
You had me talking about Standard in situations like that where I started thinking, oh, he's just going to Restoration Angel it.
I think Jacob might concede if that happens. I don't know if there's any coming back from that. But for now, Scavenging Ooze, it's pumping up. It's a 4/4, gain 2 life.
It's got a lot of work to do, though. Lingering Souls, the 1-card combo in the matchup, Brad playing and flashing it back. That Air Force he's assembled will do a fine job of racing the Scavenging Ooze.
Wilson looks like he's drawn another spell to copy Dark Confidant. That's not bad either, though Nelson does have an answer there in his hand in Celestial Purge. So we're going to head back Nelson's way. He'll take a draw step here. Can he overcome the Ooze?
I believe Celestial Purge and Kitchen Finks in Brad's hand. Now, he does have to be careful with Kitchen Finks because of how that plays against Scavenging Ooze. If it hits the graveyard and tries to persist, Jacob will have an opportunity to exile it.
There's the Purge. Going to go after the Dark Confidant. Not a lot that Wilson can do about this, though he is a reachin'. I'm curious to see what he's reaching for. He'll activate Scavenging Ooze a couple of times. Going to remove some Path to Exiles from the graveyard. And now down goes Dark Confidant. So I think that's mostly playing around Delve, is what that appears to be. Now there's Kitchen Finks. Kitchen Finks will come in, of course, gain 2 life. Nelson's last card is a Stirring Wildwood, and now both players are empty-handed. Obviously, Nelson's board a lot better than Wilson's here, but one card like a Maelstrom Pulse, which Jacob has 2 copies of in his main deck, can turn it all around.
Sure. Yeah, if he has some way to sweep the Spirit tokens. And I think you hit it. Maelstrom Pulse is the thing he's looking for. Jacob was not particularly prepared for this matchup when you look at his sideboard. There isn't a lot of sweeper style effects in here to take care of Lingering Souls.
Wilson will draw a card. Oozes up to a 5/5. You mentioned the sweet spot basically being a 6/6. It's almost there, though Thragtusk is long gone. Its beast is just left behind.
The bigger issue here is that between Stirring Wildwood, Kitchen Finks, and that beast token, Jacob has no good future on when he could attack. He's taking for a turn, but Brad's going to stay at 17.
Well, there's an Abrupt Decay off the top. And if that's going to be the draw.
That should just about do it.
Yeah. Jacob will get to activate Scavenging Ooze a couple of times here. He'll get to remove Fulminator Mage, but a timely draw there from Nelson. He's going to serve in with the majority of his creatures. Wilson will untap. He'll take a draw, and that is going to do it. Brad Nelson is going to win this match here over Jacob Wilson. 2 games to 0. Obzon is going to take care of Jun. It's the second time these players have played in this tournament this week, and they played in the Legacy group play as well. And Nelson has gotten the job done over Wilson both times they've run into each other.
Well, the first match was a dogfight. It really came down to the wire. Brad got it in 3. This one was more of a dominance display. At no point did it really feel like Jacob was going to take a game.
What you really see here, and I think this is why you, me, Patrick, Ken, and Nick picked Brad to win this matchup,